Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about how we lived on cruise ships for 45 days.
We took 5 cruises back to back to back to back to back and kind of planned it out so we wouldn't have to stay in any hotels between. That was kind of tough planning, but we got it done. We started out in Miami and we ended up in New York City, but we went all the way to Europe and back doing this. So it was an amazing trip, and we're here to tell you how it went, if we would do it again, and some tips we learned along the way for
so many things to talk about. If you follow our channel, you probably have already seen that. We've done lots of cruises this week. It wasn't this year. It's not just these 5. We did 4 others before that as well. So we've done a lot of cruising this year. As usual, we try to do as much as we can. So let's jump in. 5 cruise ships. We started out in Miami on Royal Caribbean Oasis of the Seas, and this one was a 5-day cruise.
It was a 5-day cruise, and it was the first one, and it was really great because the ship, we love the Oasis of the Seas. We like Royal Caribbean. The price was good that we got. It was kind of a, not last minute, but we just kind of we kind of tacked it onto the front of the trip because we were already going to be in Miami. So got a good price on that. It was about $1,000 for the balcony cabin, and that was a good deal. But Oasis of the Seas is just a great ship. It's a big ship, and I think one thing that I wished was that the Oasis of the Seas was more in the middle of this trip, because the variety of the food on the Oasis of the Seas is great, but we didn't really need it right then because we were right at the beginning of the trip.
We came from eating whatever we wanted on land.
Yeah, we could have really eaten anything. So I think towards the middle of this trip, we would have wished we had the Oasis of the Seas because the food can get monotonous on the longer ones. So we'll come back to that in a minute, though.
Yeah, we'll discuss that some more in a second.
We did the Oasis of the Seas. We came back to Miami and hopped right on the Disney Dream, which was a 4-day, kind of a shorter one.
Yes, yeah. So from Oasis of the Seas, walked right on down. Actually, we were going to walk, but we ended up having to get an Uber because there was no walkway or safe walking space to pull our bags and get there without getting hit by another car. So I think we took an Uber from the Oasis port to the Disney Dream port, and we were on this one for 4 days. And we actually got a special cabin on this one. We tried out an aft cabin for the first time on this cruise ship. What did you think? Yeah,
I wouldn't do it again on this ship, but we did try the aft cabin, and it was really quite rumbly back there, is what I'll say.
It was.
But what I loved about doing this was they both were out of Miami, the same port. The Uber, the guy was like, well, I'll take you, it's like 3 ports down, and then he just got back online and picked someone else up, I think.
So worked out well for him, because he got kind of double fare.
He was happy about it, but the part of the problem with the Disney one was then we did have to wait there for quite a while because we were so close to the port. And once we got into the building, the fire alarm went off in the port and everyone had to evacuate.
Yes.
And then
we were this close to getting on the ship before the alarm got off. We were the next group of people that was going to get called, and then all of a sudden the emergency alarm went off and they cleared everyone out of the building. So then we all had to get rechecked back into the building, go through security again. It took forever to get onto this ship. Oh, and then once we were getting on the gangway, getting onto the ship finally, the emergency alarm went off again.
We were like, no.
We were like, we could see the door to the ship. We're almost there. But they let us get on, so that was really good.
So going to the Dream...
a rough start.
It was. Going to the Dream from the Oasis of the Seas was kind of a shock because the ships are so different and they're geared differently.
And the size of them is, it's like half the size practically, the Disney Dream from the Oasis.
The size is different. Mm-hmm. And, it was good though. We were still kind of in that, we've only been cruising 9 days here. This really isn't that bad. This isn't much. It's all good still. We got off the Disney Dream after 4 days. And luckily for us, the next ship we were doing was right next door. It was the very next port over, Voyages Scarlet Lady. And so we just walked our bags right over.
We got to skip the Uber this time because there was a walkway basically connecting those two ports. So it was super easy to just walk from one to the other, no problem. But then the same issue of the Scarlet Lady.
Yeah, even a bigger issue with the Scarlet Lady was that the Scarlet Lady does not let you on until at least 2 o'clock. So we were there, like, we stayed on the Disney. We were the last people off the ship.
We were the last people.
We were just like...
They were like, you can leave now. We're like, not yet. We're waiting.
We'd always wondered what it was like to stay on the ship super long, and eventually they just like start getting more and more aggressive with
you get more and more of the crew members approaching you, like, you can get off, and we're like, yeah, we know. And then more people, and then like 2 or 3 of them come, and they're like, why aren't you off yet? And we're like, they haven't done final call yet, so we're gonna wait for that. They really, at the end, they're just like, please leave. In a nice way, but definitely a get off the ship. We're done with you.
So we had 4 hours at least to wait there at Voyages Scarlet Lady, which we didn't realize was going to take that long to get on. So we then kind of had to walk around and try to find some lunch somewhere, which we accomplished. There was a food truck at the port. And got on Virgin, and Virgin was just amazing because we had 4 days of all kids, then we had 6 days of no kids. Yeah.
And our kids are 25 and 23, so we don't have little kids around us all the time. Actually, it's been a long time since we've had little kids around us, so going from a ship where there were so many little ones on the Disney Dream, which we knew that going in, no problem there. But then it was like such a stark difference when you get on the Scarlet Lady and there are 0 children. It's wild.
Yeah, so the Scarlet Lady took us all over back to Miami after 6 days. Now at this point, we'd had 3 cruises. It was 15 days, and we were still feeling pretty good.
Looking good. Feeling good.
Still feeling good. We got back to, and this was kind of a nice thing, we got back to the port, and the next cruise, which was the Holland America Zuiderdam, didn't leave from Miami. It left from Fort Lauderdale. So we had to get a cab, drive up there, and by the time we did all that, actually Virgin lets you stay on the ship really late. So we got off like quite a bit later in the day.
Mm-hmm. They actually strongly encourage you to stay as long as you like. And you actually don't have to leave your room till like, 10 a.m. or something like that? Yeah, and even then you can still stay on. So we weren't the last ones like on Disney, but we were definitely in the last group of people getting off the ship.
So we got our cab and we drove up to Fort Lauderdale, and we probably got up there around 11:30 noonish. As soon as we got in, the Holland America let us right on. So that one worked out perfectly. Transition, and it was...
And our check-in for that one wasn't till like 3 o'clock or something. So we thought, well, we're used to waiting now. No problem. We've got it. We'll just sit and wait for a little while. But they didn't. They told us, hey, check right in.
Yeah, they did. So the Zuiderdam went well, and that was the start. We went from Fort Lauderdale all the way over to Europe. We ended up in Europe, and it was a longer 15 days because it was a 15-day cruise, but we'd already done 15 days. And this is where I think it started to wear on us that we'd been on a cruise ship for 30 days.
Yeah. By the time we got to Europe, and even, I think, the first 6 days of this cruise were sea days. And so that was tough. There were no U.S. or Caribbean ports, whereas usually there's at least one before you hit all those sea days. This cruise had 0, so we went straight across the Atlantic. And so that first port day was like, everyone was like, let me off this ship, and we were first in line because that was 30 days on a ship, although we had obviously been off at the ports on the other cruises. But by then we were like, okay, how quickly can we get out of here?
Yeah, I think that the other thing that we noticed was when you're on a cruise ship and being on 3 of them and switching ships, it is a little bit tiring because there are, the transition days are tiring because for the most part, other than Virgin, you're waking up at 7 a.m. You know, they start making announcements. You're up earlier than you want, and the night before you don't sleep that well. So you do that 3 times in a row, you're tired. And we got on the Zuiderdam, and we started going east across the Atlantic. Well, we started losing an hour every day on the transatlantic, and by the time we were 3 or 4 days in, we were not waking up till like noon.
By default, because you really have zero time to adjust to the time change. You're literally changing every single night. They had these little orange cards they put on your bed, and I was like, oh no, not another orange card. That means they're gonna change the time on us again. Literally every single day practically until we made landfall, that first port, and I think everyone was tired.
Yeah, and the other thing about the Zuiderdam is it's kind of geared for an older crowd, and they generally do wake up early. So, like, breakfast ends on the Zuiderdam at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So we miss that every single day. We never once made breakfast.
Never had breakfast on that ship.
We
didn't stand a chance.
We did get room service a couple times because that lasted until 10.
They did give you a little extra time. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, but what happened with the Zuiderdam was it was 15 days, and by the time we got to Europe, it's kind of a smaller ship, so you've either basically got the main dining room or the buffet to eat your dinner in. It kind of started to feel like we were eating the same. We'd been eating. You could tell we'd been eating cruise ship food for 30 days, and the last 15 days became pretty repetitive as far as the taste palette. And
It was actually Groundhog Day, just all the way around. For like everything, it felt
especially at the buffet. So this is where I'm saying I wished this is where the Oasis of the Seas would have come in, because the variety of food on the Oasis would have been very welcomed at that point of the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So once we made it to Europe, then it was
The Venezia.
the Venezia. That's right. So from there we hopped on. It was actually an inaugural cruise.
Yeah, it was great.
Bringing over the new style of ship also for Carnival, the Italian style ship. And so that was going to be another 15 days on a cruise ship coming right back to the U.S.
Yeah, that one brought us right back to New York City. And this one, I think I have to say, was, if you're doing a big long trip like this one was better because the food was better. And people will say, how was the Carnival better than Holland America? Well, I'm not really talking about the quality of the food, although I think the quality of food was pretty similar. I'm talking about the variety of the food and just having things on the Venezia like Guy's Burger Bar and stuff like that to go get good food during the day makes all the difference in the world. They had so many different places you could eat that it really kind of put a pep back in our step, and we started to feel reinvigorated on the Venezia.
Yes, there was, I think that's the beauty of, and I think that's one of the things you mentioned we liked about the Oasis of the Seas, is that there's a variety of places where you can eat. So it's not just main dining room and the buffet, you can also go to all these little restaurants all around the ship. And the cool thing for us on the Venezia is that we're used to all those different little places that they have to eat on the ship, but the ones on this particular ship had a little different twist. They had an Italian flair to them. And so that was cool because it was a whole new food experience for us as well, even though we have been on many, many Carnival cruises. So that was really cool too, right?
It was. So we learned a lot through this process of doing 45 days on a cruise and all these different ships. One thing that we learned was that we've always been people that have always said, when we get older, we want to do an around-the-world cruise, like 180 days. We want to do that. That's just always been kind of something we've always aspired to do. And now after doing this, I'm not 100% sure we want to, because being on the same ship for those 180 days, I think would get so repetitive that we might not like it. So it would depend on the ship, because I often said, when we were on the Oasis, I said, I could do 180 days on this ship. But on the Zuiderdam, I could not do 180 days.
We barely did 15.
We could barely do the 15 because those ships aren't big enough to give you enough options. Unfortunately, for people that are doing the around-the-world cruises, they're mostly taking the smaller, older ships to do it. So if you're thinking about doing a 45, a 50, a 100-day cruise, you may want to think about testing that ship with a 4-night, 10-night, because they'll let you usually buy just a part of it. So our Zuiderdam, we were only on it for 2 weeks, but it was going around the world. So we were just on one leg of it, so to speak. And after that 2 weeks, it was enough for me to say, that's not the type of ship that I want to do 180 days on. Now, I think there are ships I could do 180 days on, but I would have been pretty disappointed had that been the one that we picked, not knowing. We just kind of thought, oh, they're going to make it, they know what they're doing, they'll make it fine. Not really the case.
Yeah, probably, if I had to say, of the 5 that we were on, just these 5, not all the ones we've done this year so far, but of the 5 that we were on, could probably do longer on a ship like the Oasis, like the Voyages Scarlet Lady, and probably the Carnival Venezia.
Yeah, we could. But those are not ships that do long trips. So
they really just do, transatlantic is about as long as those ships do.
Yeah, so you really need to, I think, when you start looking at doing cruises for more than 15 days, really consider the ship. Consider the food, consider the variety, consider how many different places you can eat, what's the room service like, because these are all going to be factors that are going to attribute to your happiness. What's the hours of the meals? And which way is your ship going? Because I would not go east, I would go west. Because when we came back on the Venezia, we were going west, and we had 25 hours every day. And so it was like...
Instead of 23.
Yeah, we wake up and it's like, oh, okay, we still got an hour before breakfast. It's great.
We made breakfast every day on the Carnival Venezia.
We did.
That was not a problem. Actually, the deeper into the cruise we went, the easier it was to make breakfast. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. We wanted to try it out. Like Rob said, why did we do it? Because we were testing out what it would be like to do one of those around the world cruises, because it's on our list. And for those of you that don't know, we travel full time. We have other YouTube channels. You probably saw those at the beginning of this video. I'll also share those at the end. We share lots of different parts of our journey on those channels, including the finances and other different travel that we do besides cruising. This isn't the only thing that we do. And so as full-time travelers, this is something that, we wanted to kind of test out because we were considering that around the world cruise option. So what are some of let's talk about, just real quick before we go, a few of the pros and cons of doing this. So what are some of the pros?
Well, the pros are transportation. You can get where you need to be. If you want to just go, string some cruises together, you could do it without flying, save a lot of money, and have all your food and everything there for you. So we, on the transatlantics, basically, we spent $5,000, and that took a month. Basically, so that's a pretty all-inclusive $5,000 month because your food, your transportation, everything's included.
Accommodation, everything. And you get a lot of really cool experiences. You get a taste of, one of the things people always ask us, like, if you can go to someplace for much longer, why would you do cruises when you just go for a few hours? Well, we like to, this is a good taste test of different countries, and we want to try them out, and this way you can go and get a quick sneak peek and say, ooh, I really like that, I'd love to stay longer, or I would do this different next time, or whatever. This gives us a good taste of different places that we'd like to stay longer. You probably have the same thing. You go to different places and you're like, oh, I'd like to come back here, and then you do a vacation there. And that's one of the reasons why we like it, because we can do a little taste test of lots of different places that we're interested in going to. And that's kind of how we handpick our cruise itineraries as well.
Yeah, a couple of the cons with doing this are you do have a hard time staying connected. You are going to be reliant on the internet, which on some of these ships is really, really bad.
Abysmal in some of them.
And then a couple of them were really good. Like the Venezia, it was great. So we did notice that the better the internet, the better our mood was sometimes, because we actually are working and trying to keep up with our kids, our parents, and it can be very frustrating to have to do stuff when you just can't connect when you need to.
Yeah, and then the next con was, as Rob mentioned earlier, the food does start to get repetitive. Even with switching ships, it still felt like...
It's still cruise food.
Produced food. And we do like to cook. It's something we enjoy, eating our own food. So when we are in places longer, we rent places with kitchens because we like to cook. Like we're in Vietnam right now, which is where we're filming this. We have an Airbnb apartment. We have a kitchen and we can cook and enjoy that. Add to the variety, as opposed to having someone constantly tell me what my choices are to eat. I can't just pick what I actually desire to eat.
Yeah, you're also giving up little things like It's harder to do laundry. Now, you can get it done on some ships, but even things as little as like what you're going to be watching on TV. Because when you start talking about doing 45, 60, 90, 100 days on a cruise ship, you're missing big chunks of the year. So you really need to think about those types of things. What is your ship going to have available to you? Because you are going to be limited to only whatever is on the ship.
Exactly, and we're sports fans, so we miss out on a lot of sports too if we go during sports seasons. A lot of times the good sports are not on TV.
Except on the Oasis of the Sea. They had all the sports channels you could ever want. And that was one of the big reasons why I was on that ship. I was like, I could live on this ship. They had the food, they had good TV. I mean, it was kind of like, yeah, this could be home. I could do this for 100 days. Unfortunately, like 4 is the most you can do, or 7.
Yeah, it's a ship that goes on much shorter cruises than some of the other ones. But
so, do you recommend doing this type of thing?
Do I recommend doing it? I mean, if you want to test for a world cruise, but we probably won't be doing it again, will we?
Probably not back to back to back to back to back.
Might take a break.
I think it was too much. We probably wouldn't do that many switches again. If we found the cruise that we loved, and we knew it was a ship we loved that we'd been on before, I would definitely do 40 or 60 days on it. But not on a ship that I didn't know anything about, or it might not be one that I loved.
Yeah. So guys, we have videos on all of these ships and the other ones that we've done so far this year right here on the channel. Not just, you know, room tours and ship tours and all that kind of good stuff, the regular stuff, but we also are sharing with you what are some of the things that we love and hate about each one of these ships, and then also sharing with you kind of an overall of what we think of all of the different brands that we've sailed so far this year. So check that out right here on the channel. Guys, if you have any questions about our 45 days living on a cruise ship, leave those for us below in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time.